Unmute your mics. Netra, your mic is muted. So, hello.
Netra, am I audible?
Welcome to the Before we begin today's session, I would like to take a moment to talk about what this initiative is and why it was created. So, over the next 30 days, we will be hosting. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Fine. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Sanjivita. So, welcome to the Builder Protocol. Before we begin today's session, I would like to take a moment to talk about what the initiative represents and why it was created. So, over the next 30 days, we will be hosting experts from the across technology landscape, including AWS heroes, principal engineers, architects, security leaders, and AI builders. So, through this experience and insights, we will explore the technologies that are shaping the future of our industry. Throughout the series, we will cover a wide range of topics, including cloud computing, AI agents, event-driven architecture, serverless technologies, DevOps, cloud security, platform engineering, and modern software architecture. So, whether you're just beginning your journey or are building projects and preparing for your career, the building protocol challenges you to think bigger, learn deeper, and continue building. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joshua from St. Joseph College of Engineering, AWS SPCL, and it is now my immense pleasure to welcome our esteemed speaker, Sridevi, an AWS hero and an active leader in Women Tech User Group. She currently serves as a director of cybersecurity with over 20 years of experience, spanning enterprise architecture, cloud computing, cybersecurity, and digital transformations. She has played a key role in designing and delivering secure, scalable, and resilient solutions across organizations. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Sridevi is widely recognized for her valuable contributions to the community through mentorship, knowledge sharing, and community leadership, inspiring many professionals and inspiring technologists along the way. We are delighted to have you with us, ma'am, and we look forward to gaining insights from your wealth of experience and expertise. So, guys, please join me in extending a warm welcome to our speaker, Sridevi.
Thank you, Joshua, and thanks, Netra.
Yes.
Thanks for setting the context. Okay, very good evening. I know it's very late on a weekend, and seeing so many people online, and it's very nice. Uh, Thank you for joining. So today I don't want to make it very prescriptive because DynamoDB anybody can learn. Everything is available online. So whatever I'm going to do, I'll share the link with all of you. But I want this more interactive, right? So because I've seen the cloud from on-prem, right? So when we started before 22 years, no cloud, so we have to build everything from scratch. So I've seen cloud growing from S3 up to what it is, at least AWS to what it is today, right? So all the 20 years I've seen the journey of AWS as I grew with the IT industry. So any question you may have relevant to any topic, be it cloud or data analytics or cyber or a development life cycle, feel free to interrupt. Feel free to ask more questions because DynamoDB anybody can learn from online, right? So you have all the material, you have AI, you have GitHub Copilot, so it can help you. But if you want to hear some of the personal experiences, that's something that is very specific to me. And if you have any questions anytime, not just this session, please ping me on LinkedIn as well, and I'll try to respond as much as possible. But any question you may have with respect to your career, where what should I do? I mean, I may not be very good and on the career prediction at this point of time, because we don't know where the industry is trending towards. But at least what should you all focus, right, at this point of time? Because I do mentor a lot of students in my own organization, so I have a lot of interns working for me, so I know what we are doing, at least from the current batch, right? For next 2 3 batches, we know what we have to do. So at least from that perspective, if you have some vision on what you should focus, I'll be happy to answer some of those questions as well. Okay, so not very specific to DynamoDB. I can cover a bit of DynamoDB. So I used to be a mentor in Great Lakes teaching DynamoDB for 6 hours. So I can talk about DynamoDB for entire day, but that is not my intent today. So I don't want to talk too much on DynamoDB. I can give you some basics and tell you how it works at a very high level. But any further questions on anything that you want to hear from me, wherever I think I can answer, I'll definitely answer my questions, answer your questions, and share my experiences. Okay. So before we get started, any questions you may have, not related, not very relevant to AWS or DynamoDB or community, anything, whatever you think that you have something to ask, we'll start with a question, and then as we progress, I know we have 45 minutes to 1 hour. I am okay to extend if you have a lot more questions, but let's start with a question if anybody has a question. I don't want talking. I mean, I don't like monologue. Most of the times, I want people to ask questions and a challenge. So we'll start with the question. Anybody? Everybody understands Tamil, or are there people who doesn't understand Tamil here? Hey, am I audible, Joshua?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So no question. So okay, thanks. Is that Mohana Priya the Priya I know, or is it somebody else?
It is our senior, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Then I know her. Okay. So this is a cloud club, is it? So are you kicking off the next set of cloud club? Is that how it works, or what is this group all about now?
So this is our next batch of cloud students, ma'am. So
Hmm.
it transitioned from our cloud AWS Cloud Club to student builder group leader. So this is our
Okay.
next set of gang.
Okay. And all of you are from which year?
So some of here the people here are from third years and some of our final years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fine. Okay. So how are your campus interviews? I know I just want to break something before I even talk about DynamoDB. That's the reason I'm asking. So how is your campus all going? And what is the focus of your campus interviews this year? No questions? No answers? Okay, we'll get started. Okay, so do you have databases in your syllabus at this point of time, or is it not?
We did have, ma'am. We did have database on our third year.
Okay. And this is a mix of all departments, is it? So you're
Yes, ma'am. It's not only IT. It's EC. Everybody.
okay, good. Okay, thanks, Joshua. Then maybe I'll get started. I'll talk about DynamoDB, but I want anybody to interrupt me, ask more questions. I don't want silent crowd.
Sure.
So raise your hand, and can they unmute themselves? Is that an
Yeah, ma'am.
option, or
Yeah. They can unmute themselves.
okay, that's fine. Okay. So this is an opportunity for all of you. As I said, right, DynamoDB, what I'm going to do is a workshop from AWS. Okay, so I can share that link with you, and all of you would be able to do. So what is something that is not there in the workshop is what I want to focus on. So a workshop tells you what to do, right? So why are we doing this, and what is it all about is what I'm trying to add on top of it based on my personal experiences working with DynamoDB and implementing some of the customer applications, right? So I just want to have a little bit of specific experience I have on AWS, and that's the reason I'm a little passionate towards it. So I was working for startups between Cognizant and the current company Fidelity. So for 5 years, I was with startups. So when I was working for startups, I was focusing more on data analytics. So as part of that journey, I used to work with AWS extended team. So I used to work with AWS themselves, implementing some of the solutions. That is where I had a lot of exposures working on AWS technology. Okay, so whatever I'm sharing today is based on what we worked on the real-time use cases, implementing some of the customer problems. Okay, so that's the reason I'm a little passionate towards DynamoDB because it has solved a lot of challenges. But when we talk about DynamoDB, right, why am I talking about databases at this point of time? So we know AI, everybody wants to learn agentic AI, everybody wants to learn RAG and all of those, right? But the foundation of any model is data. So how do we harness the right data? How do we store the data in the right format? And how do we process the data effectively so that we get the right quality data, right? So the databases plays a very important role in storing your data and processing your data and serving your data for your data models. Okay, so you all should understand how your data is harnessed, right? How your data is processed for the entire life cycle, so that you can build better models and you can do better agents as well in the future, right? So, and again, AI agents are not the only way. We also have a lot of other use cases where data is leveraged. So understanding the basics of DynamoDB or relational database for that matter is going to help you build effective systems in the future. Okay, so database concepts are very generic. It is not going to be whatever I'm going to talk today is not going to be using AI agents or something, but you have a lot of other use cases in the same page that I'm going to share with you on the advanced concepts where you can use AI, right? So if you want to build an AI search engine, then database forms your base, right? So how do you stream your data from DynamoDB for your AI agents? Or all the use cases are available, but I want all of you to understand the basics of how data is stored in DynamoDB. Okay, so that is the intent of this session, and you can build on this, right? If you know the basics, I think all your AI use cases can be built on this. Okay, so AI is not a specific thing. So what you're going to do is build some prompts on top of the data, and what I'm going to tell you today is how do you build an effective data. Okay, so let me share my screen and then let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, is my screen visible? Can you see my PPT?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay, so I know all of you study databases. So databases have one is data, another one is database management system. How do you perform operations on database, right? So how do you perform some, so you store data, how do you store data effectively is one part of it, and how do we operate on the data is another part of it, and these two together forms your database systems, right? In the database itself, there are two major categories at this point of time. One is relational, another one is non-relational databases. So DynamoDB falls under which category?
Non-relational.
Non-relational database.
Okay, super. So now this is very interesting, right? So now we'll ask, right? So what is relational and non-relational according to you? Again, I'm not scoring, I'm not giving you any grades. And I mean, see, basically, I love a lot talking to college students because you know a lot of things better than us in the latest trends, right? So according to you, what is the difference between relational and non-relational databases?
Yeah, relational database something which follows the asset properties.
Mhm.
Non-relational database like to follow the documents, key value pairs, graphs, that kind of stuff.
Okay, amazing. Okay. Uh, What are other examples of relational databases? Give me some examples, whatever you know of from a relational database side.
Ma'am, I think PostgreSQL, MySQL, Oracle, or from relational database side. I think so.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. And NoSQL other than DynamoDB, what else you could think of? Okay, I've given this. So MongoDB, Cassandra, all of these are NoSQL databases. Okay. So what is a I thank you for making it interactive. I like doing the session so that it is easy for everybody to understand, right? So what is the what how do you define a SQL databases and a NoSQL databases, right? So SQL databases are like Excel, right? Which has rows and columns, right? Your data is organized in the format of tables and I mean rows and columns. with a predefined structure. The schema of your SQL database should be fixed, right? So it should have your first name, last name, email, phone number, and all the records should have the same structure. Your first row should always be first name, your second first column should be first name, second column should be your last name. So it is always predefined schema and should conform to the standards of what you have defined. Okay. And when it comes to NoSQL databases, your structure is not defined. Okay, please remember this, right? So when it comes to NoSQL databases, you will have a primary key. Primary key will be defined for some of again, right? Not every NoSQL will have the same format. Now I'm talking very specifically about DynamoDB. So in DynamoDB, there will be one primary key. Okay, that is defined, but other than primary key, the next set of columns, there is no defined column names, right? So for one row can have a name, and then it can have your gender, your email, all of those. And second row can have your name, some other thing as a key, and then it can have an address. Okay, it can say your address, first line address. That could be the second row. Okay, the primary difference between SQL and NoSQL is the defined structure versus undefined structure. So your table will not have a defined structure that it should have these number of columns. It can have any number of columns. It is stored in JSON format. Okay, so you like, I hope all of you know how a JSON is stored, right? So it will be stored as a JSON format, and it can have any attributes in a single row. First row can have 2 attributes, second row can have 10 attributes, and third row can have 15 attributes. It doesn't matter. Only thing is the primary key will be one field which will be of certain type. Okay, so is it clear? So SQL is like Excel, where you have defined rows and defined rows with defined headers, and NoSQL does not have a defined format except one column that will define as a primary key. And what is SQL suited for? So when you have a lot of complex joins and reports, then you will use SQL databases. Okay, and NoSQL databases is assume it is always like a single table transactions. Okay, so here we'll not talk about normalization. If you don't like normalization, NoSQL is the way to go. No normalization, so data will be repeated, and you just put whatever data you need for that particular search pattern, and you'll just insert the data accordingly. Okay, there is a reason for this. There is a reason why SQL, DynamoDB is organized that way. But generally, it is for recommendation engine, and it is used for gaming, where you don't do bulk operations. Rather, you do single record invocation, where uh, fast your time to respond is should be in millisecond latency, right? It should not be taking a lot of time. So for those use cases, we'll go with NoSQL databases. And examples, as somebody told me, so it is all SQL, Postgres, Oracle, all form SQL databases, and non-relational databases are DynamoDB, MongoDB. So the one is write SQL. I'll go to the next slide also. Give me a minute, I'll share one more time. Some problem with my sharing. So when I started my career, maybe way back in 2003, uh, any guesses how long it would take to spin up one server? Not spin up, rather we do a big process. But if I have to do a POC, right now I'm using a Java Spring Boot of version 20, and I have to go to 21. I need to procure a server, right? I need some space where I can run the POC. Any guesses on how long would it take at that point of time to get a server? Some guesses?
Few minutes, ma'am.
I'm talking about 2003. Now, few minutes is okay, but when I'm talking about 20 years before.
Maybe
Takes
few
about a day.
hours.
Hours.
Server,
Okay.
days,
Sorry.
days.
Days. Okay. So when I joined, I was a full stack developer. I did part of infrastructure middleware as well. So we used to provision these servers. Whatever now AWS is doing, I used to do it. We used to do it manually, okay, because that time cloud didn't exist. So for getting one server approved, right from raising a request in Ariba or some system, and then getting it on our data uh, we data warehouse, right, wherever, sorry, wherever we have our data, right, so it takes a minimum 6 months, okay, because we have to procure a raw server, and then we have to put all these softwares, virtualization, networking, connect it to your coolant system. So all of this, right, to happen, it typically takes 6 months, okay. So we had to spend a lot of time at that point of time. So the cost of procuring a server was very high, okay. Now with cloud, cost is also reduced and your time is also reduced, correct. So now the focus is shifting towards quicker, right, how do you quickly do things, not about the costing, right. So with that concept in mind, I think the databases are evolving. There are so many databases that has gone for horizontal scaling, vertical scaling versus horizontal scaling, normalization versus denormalization. If you look at this, all of these are related to cost. Why did we normalize data at some point? Because we wanted to optimize the space, right? We didn't want to put the same data in multiple tables, so we created all the relations. Now the cost is less, so they are now looking at improving the performance of execution, okay. So from that perspective, your SQL databases are generally vertical scaling, okay. If you need to increase the size of your databases, you always go throw more memory, throw more CPU onto it, but all your NoSQL databases works on partition, okay. So you increase the number of units, you increase the number of servers, number of virtual machines, right. So generally NoSQL databases are horizontal scaling, okay. So if you need to add more DynamoDB data, then the partitions are increased automatically, okay. For DynamoDB, each partition is 10 GB, and based on your table size, number of partitions automatically increase, okay. So another thing I wanted you to understand is the access pattern, because I said SQL databases are more for querying and reporting. It has to have a defined structure of the table, so you can query the table however you want. But when it comes to NoSQL, you should know the access pattern while you're designing the table. What do you mean by access pattern? How do you get the data from the table, right? So if you have some scenarios, for example, if you're building a recommendation engine, right, you need to understand how you want to retrieve the data from the table upfront, so that you can design it efficiently. Otherwise, the cost of data retrieval is going to be really high. Okay, so access pattern is something that we should understand before we create a NoSQL database. Okay, I'll tell you why when I'm creating the table, showing you a demo, but just be aware of that. Okay, so what is one important thing when you're defining a DynamoDB is it should have a defined access pattern. Okay, you should know how you're going to access the data. Okay, so I think it is more of a repeat of what I said. So I think rest of them. So where are we using it? So generally SQL databases are very, very effective when it comes to your banking system, your building financial systems, anywhere where we have to do proper transactions, right? So if you have to do proper transactions and money, um, financial transactions, I think you should go for SQL only. And NoSQL is more for gaming industry, where you need quicker response, immediate, and for recommendations engine and real-time analytics, you can go for NoSQL databases. Okay, this is what it is. So, okay, any question before I talk a little more about DynamoDB? Any questions on the basics? So I know I spoke about access patterns, and access patterns is something that I'll show a demo. It may be a little vague, but anything else you want to ask about? Okay.
No questions, ma'am.
Okay, super. Thanks. So what is DynamoDB? So DynamoDB is fully managed. How many of you know have worked on AWS, at least explored few AWS technologies already? Has somebody did that, or is it all new to all of you? Hello?
They have raised their hands and somehow.
Oh, I cannot see you. Yeah. Oh, okay, okay. So I don't know. That's difficult for me. Okay. Good. If you have already used it, then it is good. Otherwise, I just want to talk about what is a managed service. Stop share it again. Maybe I'm not seeing your hands, sorry, but it's better if you can unmute and talk if you're talking. Otherwise, it's okay. I'll reserve for the end. Okay.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Hope you can see my screen, right? So what is fully managed service in AWS? Anybody knows?
Service that we don't need to configure that much. So I think that's called a managed service.
Okay. Yeah, so service where we don't worry about the infrastructure behind the scenes, right? So whatever infrastructure is completely managed by AWS. We don't configure what CPU we want, what memory, what storage we want, right? So we just give some basic requirements and AWS manages it for us, right? So DynamoDB is one of the fully managed services of AWS, and it is AWS's native service. Okay, so what I mean by AWS native service, there are few services like Lambda, DynamoDB, Kinesis. So all of these are AWS native services, but there are some services like Kubernetes and all your Postgre database or Oracle database, which is open source or paid services hosted on AWS, right? So there are differences between these two, right? If you are talking about Kubernetes can be the same in AWS, in Azure, or it can be in Google as well, right? So these are open source services, or these are services provided by third party. But DynamoDB, if you see, DynamoDB is native to AWS, right? We don't have DynamoDB in Azure or Kubernetes in GCP, right? So AWS is AWS native managed, fully managed service. Okay, so if you develop something in DynamoDB, I just want you to be aware of this, because when you are working for MNCs and other companies, we have to be wary of the situation, right? If somebody is working purely on AWS native services, building everything on AWS, then DynamoDB is the best fit. If they are not, then we should look at other options as well. Okay, because if you develop in DynamoDB, it is not compatible with other cloud providers. You have to do another migration initiatives. Okay, and from DynamoDB is replicated in 3 availability zones. So what is availability zones in AWS? What is easy? Any idea how many? What is a data center or a region? Okay, I'll start with region. So AWS organizes its data centers in regions, right? So how many regions do we have in India?
Mumbai, Hyderabad.
Correct. We have 2 regions.
Oh,
Correct. Mumbai and Hyderabad. And sorry, go ahead. Hyderabad is still being worked upon. I guess I haven't used Hyderabad yet, but yeah. So Mumbai and Hyderabad are the two. Mumbai is an operating region. I'm not sure Hyderabad is yet. I've not used it. But every region will have multiple availability zones. Okay. So and these availability zones are a group of data centers. So multiple data centers wired together form one AZ, and we should have a minimum of 3 availability zones for every region, and some region will have 6 availability, up to 6 availability zones as far as I know. I'm not sure if something changed recently, but US East one used to have 6 availability zones. Okay, so what is availability zone? It's a group of data centers in a specific region. Okay, so DynamoDB is the data is replicated automatically in 3 availability zones for availability things, right? So if one zone goes down, or if one data center goes down, the data will be available in the other 2 availability zones. So the maximum size of one item. What is an item? Item is one row. Okay, one row in DynamoDB is 400 KB, and that is more than enough for managing any big data. Okay, one recommendation again, when you are having a blob like an image or voice or some recording video, right? The recommendation is not to insert that the blob data, the binary data in DynamoDB. Rather, it should be hosted in S3, and there should be a reference on it in the DynamoDB. Okay, so that was one challenge we had. So that's the reason I'm just telling you, don't store a huge blob data data, binary objects in DynamoDB. That is not the purpose of it, okay? Because it is not cost effective. DynamoDB is priced based on the data you insert and the data you read, okay? So if the lesser the data you read, the lesser the cost, okay? So that's the reason you should always insert the data that is that is needed, right? Otherwise, don't insert too much of data into DynamoDB, because the pricing is purely based on the volume of data that you're reading and writing. Okay. So how does it work? Okay, so it works internally using a hash function. So when you are inserting a primary key, it puts your data into one of the partition based on the value of the hash function. Okay, I think I had another slide, right? So if you see, right, if you see this record, there is an order ID 1. So when you, and order ID is the primary key. I said there should be one primary key, right? So order ID is 1. What happens is internally it hashes the value of that order ID, and then it puts in one of the partition. So your partitions will have a range of hash values. Okay, so for example, if you say partition 1, partition A 1 to 100, partition B 101 to 200, and partition C 201 to 300, then based on your hash value, the data will be put into respective partitions. Okay, for this 7B, it is going into partition B, and then it is replicated against other two availability zones. As I said, it is always replicated in 3 AZs, right? So now once you put your data in one of the partition, it goes to the other partitions in the other AZs. Okay, but the entire partitions, if there are 3 partitions, you will have 3 partitions in all the AZs, and if there are 100 partitions, the 100 partitions will exist in all AZs. Okay, so that is how DynamoDB works. Okay, I think I'm not going to talk about all of this. So any question? I'll go on to what is it, how does it look, right? All right. So quickly, DynamoDB, a table is a table like your SQL databases, but every single row, right? Row is called an item in DynamoDB, and column, like the columns equivalent of columns is attributes. Okay, as I said, every row can have any number of attributes. It is not fixed. So first row can have, as depicted in the diagram, first row can have 5 attributes, and the second row can have 2 attributes also. It doesn't matter. So all you have to have a static partition key. Okay, so partition key alone you have to define, and rest of them is dynamic. And the partition key, right, the primary key, whatever we are saying, can be either a single key or it can be a combination of 2 keys. Okay, it can be just a partition key or a partition key and sort key. Okay, there are these are the options we have. Okay, I know we have already crossed 30 minutes. So I'll just go to the console and show you how it works. Okay. This is how your DynamoDB. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. So here you don't have a concept of schema in DynamoDB, right? If you're going to Oracle or some other databases, you have a concept called schema. So here you don't have that concept, and you just go to DynamoDB. And whatever I'm doing on console, it's doable from CLI or from SDK also. Okay, you can do it programmatically as well. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to create a table. As I said, what we have to provide is a table name, demo June 21st, right? I'm just giving today's date. And as I told you, you have to give a partition key which is mandatory, and a sort key which is optional. Okay, so your partition key can be user ID, and I'm defining it as a string. Okay, and I'm not giving any sort key. And when you're creating a table, you only need this. Okay, nothing else. And I'm just making a customization just for your costing.
Ma'am, what is the criteria for choosing the partition key, ma'am? Like, is there anything like sort key or partition key?
Okay, so I'll tell you, right? Okay, when should you go for sort key? So you have a user table. Okay, the user table will have username, first name, last name, your email and phone number. Okay, when you have the scenario, you can have your email as your primary key for that table. Correct? So here you can just have one partition key as your primary key for this table because you'll be able to search based on that email. Email is unique. So these scenarios you'll go with just partition key. When will you go for sort key? So this is more for your order related tables, order kind of tables, where the same order will have different status. Okay, you create an order and then you say, okay, today the order is created date, and then you'll have order dispatch date and then order delivered rate, right? So here the combination of order ID and the status could be your primary key. That is how you'll be able to get the unique values. If you just search for order, then you'll have multiple records, correct? But partition key is more
Yes,
of how
ma'am.
do you retrieve a single record. Okay, only for those scenarios you'll either go with both or you can just go with one of the IDs.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
and when you are storing in partition, as I said, I showed you, right? Only the partition key used for your partition. Okay, the sort key is used to store the data inside the same partition only. For example, the data will be inserted based on your order ID only, but inside that status will be the just an ordering thing there. Okay, it will just order 1 2 3 based on your sort key. Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
okay, no worries, yeah, thanks. And then you have something called capacity. So the capacity is your pricing. Okay, so DynamoDB is priced only based on this read and this capacity calculator, which is read and write capacity units. Okay, so you have to be little careful when you're defining your read and write capacity units. For now I'm going to make it on demand, as it will scale up based on how much ever you want. And if you make it provisioned, you can just define, okay, this is what my read capacity and write capacity it is. And you can also do an auto scaling. So minimum is 1, maximum is 5. I'm just going to make it 5, and it will auto scale when my target utilization goes beyond 70 percentage. Okay, so what is the read capacity unit and write capacity unit? I'll define this, but you don't have to by heart this value. Okay, I'll just tell you, one write capacity unit is required to write 1 KB of data. Okay, if your table is writing 1 KB of record every time, then you need 1 WCU. And for 4 KB of data read, you need 1 RCU, read capacity unit. Okay, that is why I was saying don't store blob data, and you know your access pattern, all of those, because you have to read effectively and write effectively. And if you are loading so much of data into the database, then your DynamoDB bill will be very high. And if you're reading so much of data also, your bill will be very high. Okay, so now I've just defined this. I'm going to turn off auto scaling. I don't want auto scaling. So I'm just going to say I need only 2 to be provisioned for this table, and I'm creating this table. So when you're creating a table for a demo purpose, all you need is a table name and the partition key, your primary key, and just go and create a table. Okay. But when you're defining your production tables, you have to definitely know what is your read capacity unit, what is your write capacity unit, and what are your access patterns. Okay, so all of these are mandatory when you are creating a production databases. Okay, and that is little advanced concepts. So I'm not going to go deep into this, but this is very basic. So this is now creating this table. Okay, so I'll just open this table and show you what is there here, right? And any question you have, please ask me. I can explain. So that, as I said, right, I can talk about DynamoDB for 2 days also, but 45 minutes is very less. I'll try to cover as much as possible here. Okay. So now we have provision 2 and 2 right, and then we index. I'll come. Okay, and then I'll go to explore items. I'm going to take some other table where I have pre-populated the data. Okay. So this is a product catalog, and if you see this record, right, so one record has different bands and colors, the other record has author. So if you see, this table has different kinds of data. Okay, if you click on one of the data, this is what I said, right? You can see a JSON view of the data. This is author, this is book data. Okay, this table this row has data related to a book, and in the same product catalog you have data related to bicycle. Okay, so So this is more of a product, but each product can be different kind of product. So you have bicycle data, you have book data, and you can also have board game data, everything into the same table. All it needs is an ID. So when you're going to Decathlon, all we need is one ID for the product, but the attributes of the product will be different, right? And if you're trying to fit this into a SQL database, I think your definition is going to be very complex. But in NoSQL database, all we need is one ID, and then you just do whatever you want. You can add any number of columns. Okay, if you see here, right, I've scanned 8 items and RCUs consumed is 2. I've given only 2, so it has consumed only 2 RCUs. And if it goes beyond that, if I read a huge data, then it will throw me an error. Okay, everybody clear with this? Until then, any question?
How to insert data, ma'am, in the like new one that demo June you have created?
See, here I'm just showing by console, right? So I can just go create an item and I can put whatever I want, right? I can have a form. So what all I have to do is I have to just give a number, right? That's my only primary key I've defined. So rest of them, it's my own thing. I can add anything. So I'll add another string value, okay? Testing number. So this is how you have inserted an item to the existing table. Okay, you see this now. This has inserted my 290, correct? And it does not have any of the already existing columns. Rather, I've added my own 2 columns now, right? And this is all through console, right? But in a real time, this real time, this is how you'll create. Okay, can you see my other screen? So this is how you do it in the real time, right? Using CLIs or using SDKs. So you create a table where you say this is my table name and these are my attributes, primary key and all of those. And how do you load data? So this is how you write. So using a file, you take this file and write all the data. I can show that file also. I'll share this workshop after this, okay? So this is a JSON file that was loaded there. Okay, so here it says, okay, put item, and this is the name of the book, ISBN on all of those, and then your bicycle information also you'll see here. So we'll not do anything through console in live, right? In live, somebody will come to an online website and they'll enter the details and we insert it. So we construct the object and we'll put the data into the database using Java or Python. Okay, was that clear?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
No worries, thank you. Okay, so I spoke about RCUs and WCUs. So just be aware of what the purpose of this. This is very critical when you are defining your DynamoDB. Okay, so this is RCU, WCU. Another important concept I wanted to cover is the index. Okay, so before going to index, any question with this, I'll wrap up. Okay, I think after that it is going to be little advanced concepts. I'll stop with index. But any question? Is everybody clear with how do you read a table, write a table, and what is the write capacity unit and what is the read capacity unit? I think if you understand these basic concepts, you should be able to create a better design. I was telling, right, that you have to know your access pattern. Why do you have to know your access pattern? Correct. So I have a table with user information. Okay, user ID 1, Sridevi Murugayen, Sridevi JMS at gmail.com, and I work for Fidelity. So this is my first record, and then row number 2, and employee type is a professional, right? And then maybe second record is a student record, and third record is a college record, or and fifth record is an company record. You can put all of this into the same table in DynamoDB. Doesn't matter that it has to be person data or any data, right? You just put all of this data, and when you are querying a company, right, now I want to run a query where I just get data by company, right? Then it will become very difficult because you don't have a primary key here, right? So you have to scan the entire data and then you have to filter the records. Okay, you have to manually go through the records and understand which is company, which is user, and all of those stuff, right? And when you're scanning a huge data, you're consuming a lot of, what will you be consuming if you are scanning huge amount of data in DynamoDB?
Uh, Ma'am, the tokens they use for write.
Correct. Read capacity units. Okay. So you'll
I
be
said the
reading.
wrong one.
Yeah, no worries. You'll be reading a lot of data which will use lot of read capacity units. Okay. So when you are using lot of read capacity units, every time your billing will go exponentially. Okay. So that's the reason you should know how you want to access your data, and based on that you should define your table structures. Okay. So that is one thing that you have to be very, very clear. So if you look at the screen again, here there are two options. Okay. There is a scan operation and there is a query operation. Okay. When you query, you have to give a partition key. So partition key is important, and partition key is always a full search. You cannot do a like search. Okay. So I have to go and give, okay, ID is 290. I cannot say ID like 290. Okay. So that is not an option. So when you query, if you see the RCU consumed is zero point 0.5. Okay. But if I go and scan, there is no scan does not have any filter. It will scan the entire table. So this is a very small table, so you are scanning your data is only 2 RCUs consumed. But imagine millions and millions of record in enterprise. Every time you cannot scan. Okay. The recommended options is always querying the data with the right partition key. Okay. So that is the reason the recommendation is to have to understand the access pattern before you create your DynamoDB, and you should always go with query. Okay, so is this point very clear? And query, and with query, you'll not be able to do a like search. It is always an equal search. Okay, everybody clear? Only if you understand this,
Yes,
I can
ma'am.
talk about I can talk about the next thing, which is your index. Okay. So what is the purpose of index? Now, if you see this table, you'll be able to query only based on ID, correct? Because that is the primary key we have defined for this table. What if you want to query based on the bicycle type or some other field? Okay, maybe I'm not sure if I have some other table. I'll just see what else you have. Okay, based on some other category or some other field, and that is where you go and create another index. Okay, so what is the index? Index is the copy of your table with a different partition key. Okay, your partition key, you can define a different partition key. So for this table, I can go. So all of this is doable from code as well as from CDK. Here I'm just showing it from console. I can go create an index. So index is nothing but copy of the same data but with a different partition key. Okay. So now I can say what is my index? Index 1. And here I can say what was that field? Bicycle type, right? To give the right name. Okay, bicycle type or brand. So whatever is your business requirement, you can just have that as an attribute. And we can say what do you mean by projections is what are the fields you want in the new table, right? So now I put all. So you'll have the same set of tables in the index also. So index will take some time to create. So what it means is now you'll be able to query this index instead of tables using a different partition key. Okay, so that is the purpose of index. And whatever I've created is called global secondary index, and there is also concept called local secondary index, which you'll be able to create only when you're creating a table. There the partition keys will be the same, only the sort key will be able to give a different version. Okay, so generally we don't use local secondary index, so I'm not going to talk about it, but global secondary index is used very widely. So I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so this is the purpose, and once you create this, I can go to the export tables. It is still creating. So here I'll be able to select the index, and here now the attribute has become bicycle type, right? So here I can go and say okay, hybrid, and it will give you that result. And now also you see only 0.5. So because the data is still not replicated, you're not having the record. So once the index is fully created, you can see this record. Okay. So this is very basic. So and you have something called global table. So global table is for multi-region replication. And another important thing, just be aware of this, is streams. So streams is very important use case of DynamoDB, where the data will be directly streamed into Kinesis and other streaming like Open SQL, and wherever you want to have real-time data, real-time analytics, you'll be able to stream this data, and you just have to turn on provide some streams so that you can do a real-time analysis of the data getting inserted into DynamoDB. And this is very important use case for all your AI. Okay, so if you're running Open Search using Kinesis, or running some Bedrock integration, then everything should go through one of the streams. Okay, so from DynamoDB to streams to Bedrock. Okay, so everything happens through streamings only. So again, streaming is another big topic I can cover some other day, but just be aware of this: how data flows from DynamoDB to other streaming engine is through the streams. Okay, let me see if the index is created. Still creating. So one thing that all of you should be aware: when I create an index, what I'm doing is copy of the existing table, correct? So from a cost twice, you're going to pay twice. Okay. So this is going to have its own RCU WCU, and the index will have its own RCU WCU. So it is more of double the cost, but you have to understand which is effective. Is scanning effective, or is having another index effective when you are designing a DynamoDB? Okay. So these are some of the concepts you should be aware of when you're creating. At least you should prompt your AI asking these questions when you are using GitHub Copilot or Google Gemini, whatever it is. Ask this valid question so you'll get the right design in place for DynamoDB. Okay. With this, I'll stop. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. Or if you want to explore and anytime ping me and LinkedIn, happy to answer any of the questions you may have.
I
I'll
have
share.
one small query, ma'am.
Yes, please.
So, where exactly we use this DynamoDB in our project? Like, if it's a production level project is there, where exactly we have to use?
Okay, so basically it is not that one application should only use DynamoDB or SQL database. Okay, there are scenarios where the same application will use both. Okay, so when you are having where did I use is one was with a gaming company. Okay, a gaming company, the data of the games and all of those information, the transactional information of the games will be in transactional database. Okay, like Oracle or Postgre, right? But the player events, right, the player when he plays the real events, that needs nanosecond response time, so those data will be stored in DynamoDB, and the retrieval will also be faster in DynamoDB. So those use cases we use DynamoDB. And another use case where we used is the session details, right? User to session. So when you are using a session, when you are having a huge application, then the session details will be in DynamoDB. And Amazon uses DynamoDB for its Amazon e-commerce website. Okay, it's completely on DynamoDB. If you just go and read that article, they don't have Oracle at all. Okay, so there is a huge use case on how they are leveraging DynamoDB for our Amazon.com.
So,
And
ma'am, we have to connect this with AWS Lambda, and we have to use for the event trigger and all.
Not necessarily Lambda. You can also use it from a Spring Boot, right? So how you use your SQL database, the connection is similarly typically the same. Only difference is Oracle uses JDBC connection and DynamoDB uses HTTP connection. Okay, so that is one. And then if you are using Kubernetes, then you can have a role-based authentication and connect directly. And Lambda is also, see, you can, Lambda is nothing but an event based engine, right? So that can be used everywhere with all services. Lambda is usable. But connected to DynamoDB is not limited to Lambda. It is like your regular database. You can use it in Kubernetes. You can use it in Spring Boot on EC2 instances, batch operations, based on the use cases, right? So you should not think from an infrastructure perspective, rather the use case perspective, right? So builders need a real-time nanosecond latent response, right? If you have such requirement, then DynamoDB can be an option. And do you know the access pattern? So knowing your access pattern is very important when you are using DynamoDB. And your recommendation engine, your Prime Video, right? So where user, okay, so your Prime Video, when you're watching a Prime Video, you stop the movie at some point, you come back and watch from that place and all of those stuff, right? So that is all stored in DynamoDB only. And your Samsung user preferences, right? Your user data cloud and those references are also in DynamoDB. There are a lot of use cases. If you just Google it, you'll know where all it's used. It has huge adoption in the industry.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I do have a question.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Um, in traditional databases, the DB administrators would spend most of their time on tuning and query optimization. And my question is, where would you see the primary role of a DBA in DynamoDB would be spending much time on?
So for DynamoDB, we don't have any DBA concept. Okay. So I used to manage the DynamoDB. So there is no whenever it is a managed service, there is no admin concept. Okay. It should be the developer who should be knowing how to manage the resources effectively. Okay. So DynamoDB, no DBA. All we need is we need to know the access pattern. So if you don't know the access pattern, actually I did one project with one of the customer just tweaking the access patterns. Okay, we redefined, we created index and all of those stuff, but it is completely in the hands of the architects and developers for DynamoDB, no DBA.
That answered my question, ma'am. Thank you.
No worries, thanks. So you should just know that RCO WCO consumption. I've seen a lot of people using billions of transactions in DynamoDB. Okay, you can imagine, right? Prime Video, if it uses, then you know how much of data it should be reading, right? So you have to optimize it properly. Okay. Any question? Again, I'm not saying DynamoDB is the best database. We have a lot of other databases. Uh, we have Graph, we have SQL, we have Neptune, a lot of different databases. Everything has its own purpose. All we need to understand is which is the right database for my use case, right? So just research that and then select the right question, right database. Yes, Nitish, you have a question. Nitish, if we cannot hear you. At least or I cannot hear you. Okay. Any other question on
Ma'am,
cyber?
I have a question, ma'am.
Good, good.
So it
Speaking,
is
ma'am.
like,
Ma'am, hello, ma'am,
Yes.
can you hear me? Ma'am, I just want to ask about the question, the present condition of the industry. Which domain can you suggest that we can combine and study with the cloud computing? Can you suggest one domain, please?
Domain, no. Okay, what are the domains you are aware of, Nitish? See, I cannot, again, right?
Hmm.
Each
Yes, ma'am, I
domain has
clearly
its own,
understand. I
no,
have in
no,
the mind of full
good.
stack combining with cloud that I'm asking that like of domain situation because I know I know cloud computing up to a moderate level.
Mm,
If I don't additional domain which I can collaborate with the cloud, it means it is more effective, right? For
correct.
that reason, I'm asking about
Now,
it.
I'm just trying to understand what is domain according to you. Okay, so for you, domain is a full stack, right? That's what you're saying. Full stack and DevOps. These are job profiles. Okay. Uh, See, cloud on its own is more of, I mean, I mean, cloud on its own, you just provision it, right? But if you know a bit of development and bit of database design is always useful. Okay, so that is not we call it as domain, right? It is more of job profile. So domain perspective, we have cyber, AI, ML, and as well, right? So there are a lot of other domains that is tracking a lot of traction as well. So at this point of time, what I would recommend all of you is to have a good understanding of the basics, be aware of all the full stack development also, right? With I have a lot of interns in my team, and they'll deliver it in a week. Okay, whatever I tell them, they do it the day one, next day, and I'll see that working. Okay, so only challenge I see with all the interns is they'll not be able to debug it because you don't know, you're not spending the time to understand how every single component works, right? When it comes to understanding and performance tuning things, there are a little bit of challenges with GitHub Copilot and other tools that we are leveraging. So basically, what I would say is, yes, full stack development is very important. You should also know a bit of DevOps pipelines and a bit of database. All of these three are very important when you become, by full stack I mean all of this. Okay, it is not just Angular backend and front end development. So if you know all of this, I think there will be a lot of opportunities waiting for you. But when you're doing this, please understand the basics. Okay, basics are very important.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I can clear that.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I have a question. Like whatever, you have given the demo today. Like I have understood all the concept. I want to know if I want to make a hands-on project, how can I start and how can I make a simple hands-on project like high level? If you can just guide.
But do you have access to AWS Cloud student account? I think there is a
Yeah, ma'am.
student
Free
account,
tier
right?
account is there. Yes.
So you can just, I'll share one link after this meeting. So whatever I showed today, it is an AWS workshop. So AWS workshops.com has a lot of workshops. Okay, one, you should know what services it's using, and maybe you should understand the credits that is allowed in student. I don't know how much of it is allowed, but try to attend more workshops where you get hands-on experience. So I always be in workshops because that is where I learn more, because whatever I show today may or may not say make sense to all of you, but try it once. It's very simple. DynamoDB is very, very simple that you can learn in a day. Only challenge is the access pattern. So use student account, and if you need more and if you want to try more, reach out to me or any of the heroes or community builders. They'll be able to help you with some credits that you can apply on your account and test. And your account should be a personal account. I don't think we can apply credits on educate account. But if you want to try something, reach out to any one of us. That's the purpose of AWS heroes, and there are 22 heroes in India. 20 or 22, I don't know. 20 heroes, at least 20 plus heroes in India, and they'll be able to help you with credits. Okay, and I can also help with some credits if you want to try on your personal accounts. Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
no worries.
Ma'am, I do have a follow-up question. You said that there are no DBAs in production grade. Since
No,
there
no,
are
no,
no
for a DynamoDB, for DynamoDB.
for a DynamoDB environment,
Yeah.
if there is none, should the developer themselves handle the disaster recovery? Since AWS only handles partially like infrastructure level disaster recovery. So do developers themselves need to handle the disaster recovery, or?
Yes. So when it comes to cloud, right? So it is at least you have to always design your application not just from database, right? It is of everything, right? Right, your application server, your web server, everything you should have a backup plan. So DR is a mandatory. That is why we do it on multiple AZs, multiple regions, cross-region replication. All of this should be designed by your architect and implemented by your developers and DevOps team. Generally, a DevOps team will support with all the implementation, but the design should come from the architects and your leads. Okay, so it is always developers' responsibility. Right now, we don't have specific admins, but uh,
You to Sridevi Murugayen for sharing her valuable insights and expertise with us. So, thank you for taking the time to guide us through the event driven architectures and help us understand how modern cloud native systems are built. So, I would also like to thank everyone who has joined us today and made the Build Up Protocol Day a success. So, this is just the beginning of a 30-day journey, and we will look forward to seeing you at the upcoming sessions too. So, until then, keep learning, keep building, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Have a good evening. Nitish, you have a question? I see your hand